Okay, welcome to session 2. In the previous session, I wanted to just give a quick demo of all of the amazing features of Ableton, the ability to jam out on your session view clips and launch different scenes and kind of remix your ideas sort of on the fly and be in a very cool, creative, improvisational space. And then also you can flip around to the arrangement view, as I showed, and work with automation and different mixing techniques to build sort of the narrative arc of your song on the timeline, beginning, middle, and end sort of situation going on the arrangement view. So what I wanted to talk about in this session is the user interface and basic design and functionality of the session view. So let's get into some of the main features here. As you may have noticed, the session view is oriented vertically, and all of the controls are kind of repeated from each channel to the next. I can click on channel 1 and it illuminates the controls here. If I click on channel 2, it illuminates the controls for that channel. So that's very nice kind of functionality. Lets me know where I'm at, different tracks. Each track has a volume fader or volume slider or fader. And this is basically just controlling the output volume for that track. So I can just grab the triangle here and pull the mouse down to bring the volume down, or pull the mouse up to bring volume up. I generally recommend not bringing the track above 0 dB, because if we bring it above 0, we bring it up into the level and it's going to start peaking. And when it says 0, that basically means that we're not adding or taking away any gain on the track. It's just sitting as the track was recorded. We're not adding anything or taking anything away. And I do like to let it sit a little bit below 0, like -6 is a good number, because if I start adding effects like EQ or compression, it's going to start adding more gain to that track, and I'm going to start getting into peaking, and I'm going to basically run out of what we call headroom, and the track will start to get overloaded and overdriving and peaking. So I try to keep my tracks, below 0 as much as possible. This number here, you'll see it kind of is changing as I move the track up and down, and that's just indicating what the output level is for the track. And then the number above it is what the amplitude of the track is at any given time. So it's going to show you if you are peaking, it's going to say like +4, and it's going to turn into the red here. And so you generally want to keep an eye on this. This will show you if your track is peaking or clipping. Next item on the list here is the panning. Panning is going to basically help me work with the stereo field of left and right. So if I'm wanting to put something over into the left side of my head, or the speakers or the stereo image, then I would just pull the mouse down on the panning knob and pull it over to the left. And then pushing up, holding it down, is pushing it over to the right side. And I'd like to encourage you to experiment with panning, especially for your sound designy elements, things with high frequencies, like cymbals, bright pads, string arrangements, things like that. And work on panning them hard left or hard right, because you'll start to get a wider stereo field and a more of a cinematic sort of sound design component to your music. A lot of people leave all of their stuff just in the center channel, and you really don't get as much dynamics in your mix. You want to start working with some variation in the placement in the stereo field. And then with just a little tip, with low-end material, I would recommend keeping it in the center. So that'd be like your kick drums, your sub basses, etc. Keeping those in the center makes them a lot more punchy, and they pop out of the mix a lot better without having to turn them up. And then also the vocals and maybe snare drums and electric guitars and things, you probably want to keep those pretty close to center, because those are the main elements of your song. Those are maybe like the star of your tune, and you want to keep those in the center so they have the most presence. Next function here is the track activator. That is turning the track basically on or off without turning the volume down. If I want to turn the volume down, that's fine, but maybe I like where the volume is, I just want to turn the track off for a second, and I can just use the track activator button there. And then the button below it, below number 5, is the solo button. And what the solo button is going to do is going to turn all the other tracks off and solo just that one track. So when I hit the solo button, you'll see two things happen. First of all, it turns blue, and then all of the other tracks all turned off. So if I have, say, a scene launch here, let's check this out. Yeah, we'll go for this. And then I want to solo something. I could just solo that one track, work on it, make some adjustments, and then bring everything back. So it's a very nice feature. Common across almost any mixing board, you're going to find these features of the volume fader, track activator, and the solo button, as well as panning. So we see here on all of our tracks, we have these colored bars, and as I mentioned earlier, these are called clips. And we have two different types of clips in Ableton. We have MIDI clips, and we have audio clips. So a MIDI clip is really just a bunch of MIDI information on what we call a piano roll. And I can move the MIDI notes around, maybe change a different time inside the rhythm, different placement. And then audio clips are more pictures of the waveform. So I just clicked on an audio clip here. And what I'm seeing here, this is a stereo file because I have two similar tracks running in parallel. And if I launch the clip, I'm basically getting a visual representation of what I'm hearing, and we call this an audio waveform. So two different types of clips in Ableton, MIDI and audio clips. Another thing to keep an eye on is the right click on your mouse. If you right click in Ableton, a whole other menu opens up. So I'm right clicking on this clip here, and it gives me the opportunity to cut it, to copy it, duplicate it, or delete it. Duplicating is fun. If I want to, I can just duplicate that track, and now I've got two versions of that clip. You could also duplicate a track if you wanted to, for whatever reason. Now I have two instances of this track. If you want to undo something, maybe you made a mistake or you don't like what you did, you can just hit Command Z, and that'll undo everything. So right click allows me to also rename the clip or the track if I want to. If I want to say this would be drums, I just hit rename and started typing. If I want to rename a clip, I can just hit right click on that clip and then hit rename. And I can say drums 1, whatever I want to say. Okay. If I don't want to have any name in my track, I can just erase the text and hit return. So I want to show a few other things with the transport up here and some of these knobs and buttons. Some of these will be more applicable to the arrangement view that we'll talk about in just a second, but I would like to go over a few things with you here. One of the most important ones is the tempo. So right now our tune is sitting at 125 BPM, and let's just hear what that sounds like. Now if I change the tempo, the track is going to speed up or slow down. So let's try slowing it down first. You can type in a number. I'm going to type in like 110. So everything's slowed down dramatically, and it all slowed down together. If I want to speed it back up again to 125, I can just type in the number. I can also grab the tempo with my mouse and pull it down to slow it down. I can also push my mouse up to speed it up. So tempo is very, very important in music. It's basically the speed at which things are played. And entire genres of electronic music are based on tempo. Dubstep, for example, is at 140 BPM, and it's often played at halftime, so it's really 70 BPM. Reggae and hip-hop is down around 85, up to around 100 BPM. Deep house is about 125, which is what we're hearing here. Trance, breaks, and techno are up at 130 to 140 BPM. So electronic music especially is very BPM specific. The genre is dictated in a lot of ways by the tempo of the song. The next button over here is the metronome. When I engage the metronome and I press play, I'm going to hear a little clicking sound, and that's going to indicate the tempo of the song. So if I launch a clip along with the metronome, so I can tell that this clip is actually playing in time with the Ableton session, and that's really, really helpful. If you don't want to hear the metronome, you can always turn it off. And if you want to hear the metronome louder, you'll find the metronome volume right over here with this headphone icon over here, way down by the master fader. If I want to turn the metronome up, I can do that here. Turn it down. Okay, and I can also just turn it off. Okay. Another thing to pay attention to, one of the most important things actually in Ableton is this Global Quantization button here, which is this business right here where it says 1 bar. What's happening here is that all of the clips are quantized to launch on the downbeat of a bar. So that means if I launch this clip, for example, this next clip over here, this MIDI 1, it's going to wait till the downbeat of the next bar before it starts playing. And what that does is that keeps everything in sync. So that means the tracks or clips are not launching randomly, next to each other. They're launching in sync with each other because everything is warped and everything is quantized. So it's basically on the grid and in sync. So let's experiment with that again. You can also adjust the time that a clip waits before it launches. I can have that set to maybe 2 bars. This is actually a better example. So I'm going to launch my first clip, and you'll see the second clip that I launched, the green one over here, will wait quite a long time before it starts. And that's because it's waiting 2 bars before it begins. So here's one. I'm going to launch my second clip. It's waiting. There we go. And so that keeps everything in sync. So if I launch some other stuff, everything turns on and off based on the quantization. Very, very important feature. Now, if I didn't have this on, for example, if I turned it to none and I started launching clips, you would hear something like this, and it's not going to be very pretty. Now what's happening is the clip is launching as soon as I touch the arrow because the quantization is turned off. So they were basically not in sync with each other. So if you want to launch things that are not rhythmic and don't need to be in sync, you can turn this off. But I recommend having it to set at least to 1 or 2 bars. 1 bar is the default that Ableton opens up with when you start a new session, and you can just leave it there. You very often don't have to think about it. We have some other features up here. This is what we call the transport. This is not going to be so important to us in the session view, but we'll work a lot more with this when we're working in the arrangement view. But basically you have your start button, just hitting that. To stop the track, you just hit the square button, which is stop. If I want to record something, I need to arm the session, and then to start recording, I just hit play. Okay.